just going to in things that get found in forests.
Like
But anyway,
trees.
What? Trees. More trees. Romans. What?
Countrymen.
Country women.
Elves and fairies and gnomes.
Elvis. Do you know, somebody was talking about the other day, they was talking to Elvis the other day, and I was thinking they were having this long conversation, and then it turned out they've got a friend who's actually called Elvis.
Gosh.
So you're thinking, well, why the hell did you tell me at the beginning of this conversation?
You don't hear of many Elvises, do you? I wonder if it was a popular name in the southern states.
It probably was. I should think an awful lot of fans of Elvis would have called their children Elvis.
Was it? It was his real name.
I'd be surprised if they didn't.
What, the southern states?
Real name.
What do you mean, the southern states? What, like
Aaron? They probably could use Aaron more than Elvis, but that was his other name, wasn't it?
That's true. Right. Okay. Well, I'm nearly ready to crack on. Do you know? Have you? Right. Okay. Have you ever gone out your way and bought something new and decided that you're going to take ages using it because you don't want to use it?
I'm trying to think.
I don't think I've ever had that reason to. No. Why have you got something like that?
Yeah. Well, I bought a new. Hang on a minute, Pete. Oh,
is it Pete?
Hello, Pete. What's the problem?
I can't get on. It keeps telling me that. It keeps shutting me off. I can't get onto online.
Well, we're definitely here, Pete.
Oh yeah, well I can't reach you for some reason. I don't know why.
Right. Okay. I'm just going to ask everybody. Does anyone know the sign-in details for this thing?
Not offhand, no.
Right. Okay.
Go back and look for it.
Right. Okay. Okay. We're just. I'm trying to get started. I'm just trying to get this. Right. Okay.
Whenever I do a Zoom, it doesn't get you to come up with join a meeting. And I just enter your ID and we will join.
I could go and have a look for it. It'll be on my tablet. I can even switch this off.
Hang on a minute. If I can, hang on. Yeah, what? Right. Okay. Okay. The number is 885.
Yeah, I got all that. I got that here in front of me.
Right.
But it won't come up with join. It was join a meeting for some reason. I don't know. Keep saying Norton has blocked this.
Oh, right.
Well, never mind.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because we're waiting for you to come on. Right. Okay. Have you tried turning your computer off and putting it back on again?
No.
Right. If you turn your computer off and put it back on, it might happen. Yeah. Have you got anything else you can use?
No, not really.
No.
No, hang on.
Yeah, David's waiting there. He's chaffing at the bit. He's like a hound dog.
Oh, well, never mind. Forget
it. David's there. He's
shutting down now. It's shut down.
Okay, shut down. And you put it back on. It should work. Actually, what you could do is use a different window if you're using Google or if you use something else, another search engine. Usually, most computers have a different.
All right, let's see what happens now.
All right. Sandra's not with you, is she?
No.
So how are you feeling these days?
Well, as well as can be expected. I've got this bloody thing that's strapped to me. Thing that's It's not good. I got a dressing on my head wound.
All right, that's still ongoing then.
Yeah, all ongoing. Yeah, the district nurse comes out every couple of days to change the dressing.
Yeah. All right, Andy's just joined us as well.
Oh, good man.
What else can I
Marijuana's usually good, Pete.
I'm in Firefox now.
Yeah, give it a go.
Well, that was.
Have you done anything with your computer recently?
Well, only about the things that I've done, always done.
Right. Okay.
Hello, Andy.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Good evening. Yeah.
Oh, good, good, good. Sorry, it's just taking me about 15 minutes to get joined in here.
Hey, what has been your problem? Because Pete's had problems as well.
Yeah, no, it was. I had a Zoom update and it just wouldn't load.
Um,
I'm
Okay.
there now. How are we all?
We're
Okay.
Pete's trying to get on.
Very good.
Good, good, good. No Drina?
Drina's sold her soul to the devil.
Oh,
it's
good.
half term. She's got family up
Got
here.
family up.
Oh,
It's half term, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it is.
it is.
Well, okay, Pete. What you could do if you can't, what you could do, you could just listen in from the phone.
It's not the same though, is it?
Okay. Oh, yeah, at least he's getting something out of right. Okay, guys, let's get started. Right. So, if Pete turns up, he turns up. If he don't, but he's still part of the little old Third Reich here. So, right. So, okay, let's get started now. Let's start off with people's news. Pete, any news from you this week? No. Okay. Who else have we got? Miserable Margaret, any news from you this week?
No, I've been reading about Machu Picchu
Ooh.
and they've discovered the real reason that it was there. But to find out more, I had to subscribe and I'm too tight. So it remains a mystery.
Yeah, hang on a minute. Talking about too tight, right? You've reminded me. The monies for the classes will be coming up due. So if you can start getting your shekels over, that'd be good. If I tell Andy now, at least he'll do it by the end of the year.
Yeah, maybe. Times are hard.
They certainly are.
So get your shekels. If I
Might
tell
have to sell some of those books to raise the money.
well, I'll just sell my body.
Rent them out.
Yes, special library.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll chuck us in there. The normal 50 shekels are now due, and that's going to cover you for November and
Oh.
December. So I
You
thought
said
chuck that in there,
soon.
okay? What?
You said soon.
Yeah, it was a few minutes ago. Yeah.
Yeah, you said soon.
So
now
now
it's
the money
imminent.
Yeah.
now the money is due because you see what I did there?
Yeah.
Not till November though.
Sneaky. That's almost as quick as the changing governments.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Now you see him, now you don't.
Yeah.
So if I tell David now, he'll get it over and he'll get it to me in time. So there you go.
Right.
Right. Okay, right. Now I've done the awkward money thing. It was because Margaret mentioned money. That's what it was. Right. Here we go. Amateurville Andy. Anything you want to say, love?
No, so there was a very interesting program on the telly this week by Dan Snow, sort of tracing the history of ancient Egypt's archaeologists, and which we've already done. But it was quite a good program on
Yeah.
Channel 5. So,
Oh, that sounds really good.
yeah, it
Okay.
was. Yeah.
Okay.
One was mentioned actually that we didn't do, and he was the guy that mapped the Valley of the Kings. And then they knew, because everyone had been working individually up to that point. It was then that they knew that they'd only found like 20 tombs, and they knew there was another 24 that hadn't been found. So they started scratching around a bit more.
Hmm.
And they've come up with about 48, haven't they? So yeah, you go.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Right. Da Vinci David, anything you'd like to say this week?
No, thank you.
And I've got to think of something for Anne. Annie, anything you want to say, love?
I watched a program today about a mummified body that was found in Egypt, which had been there for a long time, and they, I don't know, they didn't realise that it was wrapped in these linen strips which had hieroglyphs of various things on, marks on. Anyway, they looked at this and they thought it was Etruscan language, and then they thought this woman. Anyway, it all went round and it ended in different museums, and they mentioned quite a few expert linguists who are working at, and somebody managed to do a few words, made a bit of a dictionary out of it, so they could translate some bits. It is still a mystery, evidently, that the linguists in the ancient languages are working out. But they're still not sure if the language is Etruscan. But it was quite an interesting program. I'm a bit vague, I don't remember all of it, but it was really quite interesting.
Is there a link with the Etruscans in Egypt?
Yeah, there would be a link, because the Etruscan civilization would have traded with Egypt. Yes.
Oh.
What side was that on, Anne?
Where was it? I think it might have been YouTube. I think it was.
Cool.
And actually, what I'm going to say is Peter, did you know this is live on YouTube? So if you actually if you go live on YouTube, right, you could watch this anyway.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Just, yeah.
And then you can just keep there, and then if there's anything you want to say, then you can do it. Got it? Good.
Yeah. You just carry on as you're going, please.
Yeah. Okay. I will. Okay. Right. Okay. Right. All right, then. Right. Okay. Good. Right. Okay. Where I've gone. What are we doing? Right. Okay. Yes. Now I do know what we're doing. Now I was, as you guys have given your news this week, I have, somebody said to me in the week that they had a little bit of news from an archaeological excavation in Wales, right? And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to share that directly on the screen now. It's from West Wales. It's quite an odd one. It's not really anything to do with what we're doing at this minute. So we've basically come to the end of the Mesolithic period today, and we're into the Neolithic period, and that sort of everything opens up from here. So let's just sort of go directly there, and we'll start the screen sharing, and we'll go there, and we'll go there, and what we're going to do, we're going to go there. Now, this is a rather interesting one. It's when the news can get sort of things a little bit out of hand. So archaeologists find 300 bodies under Welsh department store as excavation ends. More than 300 bodies, half belonging to children, have been found in the centre of Haverfordwest. That's one of the westernmost parts of Wales. So there you go. There they are excavating in good old Haverfordwest. If you notice, that's how a proper archaeological excavation should be conducted, where everybody's got high vis, helmets, and toe cap boots, and those are exactly the same standards I would use for my excavation. So, well done. Here you go. Excavations works at the former Ocky White department store in Haverfordwest. More than 300 bodies have been found buried underneath a Welsh department store. Dyfed Archaeological Trust confirmed it had unearthed 307 graves during its excavation work of the old Ocky White store in the centre of Haverfordwest. It comes as the trust prepares to wind down its operations in what has been one of the town's most comprehensive archaeological excavations in its history. Well done. Dyfed Archaeological Trust first discovered signs of 700-year-old relics and human remains in March this year during initial groundworks in preparation for a multi-million-pound regeneration development at Haverfordwest. Work was put on hold to allow archaeologists access to the site in order to carry out a comprehensive excavation. That must have cost the developers an absolute fortune, right? And there you go. As we look down, the various other layers of going all the way back to the medieval period, you can actually see there the graves up on the left hand. You can see some legs in there coming up, and you can actually see, looking down, there's a metal thing going across. You can see a set of skeletal remains there in front of us on the screen, and it goes on. It goes on. So obviously they're talking about half of them belonging to children in the town's Bridge Street. It has also revealed details of what experts think is a squashed patterned dish together with a squashed chalice underneath, both of which were buried within the hands of a person. So there you go. Basically, we're talking about a pattern, and we're talking about what's a chalice. So that might indicate some kind of religious site. There it is there. So that's going to be, I would say that's going to be made of pewter. And that could probably date it from about the 1500s. And what date did it give that anyway? Did it give a date?
700 years old, it said. 1300s.
I would date it a bit.
1300s.
Yeah, it said 700 years old. So.
Yeah.
I'd probably go for more like the 14, but it doesn't matter. But that would indicate some kind of a religious site, I would say. So you've got all the small bones there, which would indicate that the hands. So that's absolutely brilliant. And it goes on to say the demolished department store believed. Oh, there you go, St. Saviour's Priory. Oh, right. Sorry, I hadn't read that far. So I nailed that one, but obviously I got the date wrong there by 100 years. Dominican order of monks around 1256, but many of the bodies found there have been battle scarred. The remains of hundreds of human bodies are thought to be linked to an attack by Welsh rebel leader Owen Glyndŵr in 1405. If we stop there a minute, right, Owen Glyndŵr is blamed for everything in Wales, including the plague. And in fact, Owen Glyndŵr has been blamed recently for the end of Liz Truss's government. So, you know, and in fact, Owen Glyndŵr is blamed for so many things. He was the one who started COVID. So, jokes aside, anything to do with battle scarring, anything to do with deaths is always blamed on Owen Glyndŵr. But that's the sort of that's the world we live in. And basically, here we go. And the excavations have been going on for 6 months, which is absolutely amazing. So there's my little bit of news there, right? Trust me, I should read these pieces in a little bit more detail, particularly press things before I go on, because there's me saying it's part of a religious site, and it was part of a religious site, but I got the date wrong by 100 years. But that's life. But then again, it might have been a later burial anyway. So anyway, it's not who's right or wrong. It's just that that's a massively important site. But always don't assume when you find lots of bodies that they're associated with a certain event, because there was a Welsh rebellion in 1536, which led to the act of formal union between England and Wales. So it could be from that, or it could be from another thing anyway. So let's not presume that. But wonderful find. This has been something that people have mentioned. Now, what I'm going to do now, next, this very, very moment, I want to chuck in sort of three, I believe, the best sort of Mesolithic things that we've come across. But, you know, they're just me sort of, they're three of probably the top 10 of all the Mesolithic lectures that we've been looking at. So I'm just going to give you three, because we have really done the end of the Mesolithic period. But where am I going to go with? Yes, we're going to go with Formby, and obviously one thing about the Formby Point site there it is at Formby Point, was that we were doing it. We were doing it live. You know, the discovery had been made on the Monday, the 31st of May, and we did it on the Tuesday, right? It was just like, it was so topical. Footprints at Formby. I just thought that this by far was us doing the Mesolithic period being really, really relevant to the Mesolithic period that we're actually studying at the moment. So obviously we know that date there, 6,000, is a little bit early. We know, for example, that the datings there went back as much further than that. So that puts it properly at the end of our Mesolithic period. But I look at that one there. Now there we go. 9,000-year-old human footprint of Formby. Look at that. Now that's an image. I think that's one of the most recent ones published. But when we did Formby, right? Pete's just found us. Come on, guys, let's get Pete on. He's not listening now on the phone, so let's get Pete on.
Yeah, I'm listening.
Oh, I was gonna Pete, you're online now, so get on, move it. You know, he's happy now. He was a miserable old fat a second ago. Right, Pete, you can leave us now. Right, are you online?
Oh, there he is.
I am. I can see you all now.
Hi.
Right, I
Hey,
can
Pete.
bugger up on the phone now. Try, Pete.
Okay, bye.
Don't worry, I got rid of him. Right, so right, we were talking
That
about
was a
Formby
struggle.
and what? Pete, I don't care. Right, Formby, right? I you know, often when we're doing these lectures, I get told, oh, that was on the news last
right.
week, or you know, we you know, whatever, you know, we seem to be on the front line of the Mesolithic period throughout, and it's been an absolute delight. So the footprints of Formby, I thought, and obviously look at that, the crane footprints,
Oh, yeah.
and you know, I remember when we put these recordings out online, and somebody a little bit sort of ill-advised basically said, you know, they said, these footprints dating back to 9,000 years ago, you know, they're in different, it's almost solid stone they're in, blah blah blah. And I just thought, I replied and said, well, if they were in solid stone, why did they get washed away the next day? Oh, right, okay. But you can clearly see that that's mud. That's not stone, that's mud, right? And the point I was trying to make at the time, which obviously we don't have all night. The point I was trying to make at the time was like walking alongside those footprints, making modern footprints, and then the sea comes along, washes them all away. That was the point I was trying to make. It was that point that what was going on at Formby was just like so current. It was almost as if you're following along a set of footprints that was made a few hours ago, and then the sea comes in and washes your footprints, and these 9, 8,000, 7,000, 6,000-year-old footprints, whatever, you know, because there's footprints from various different dates there, and it's all just washed away in a moment. It's almost as if it's like time travel. You're connected in a moment in time. I thought was absolutely amazing. So the other site I'd like to go to now. So if we go back to there, hang on. The other site that I really felt was groundbreaking was this site in the Shannon Valley, and you know, what we did, we looked at this you know, these two cremations in the Shannon Valley on the western coast of Ireland, and it was just I just thought it was unbelievable that we've actually got cremations. And we've got
I can see you, but I can't hear anybody.
What? You can't hear anybody? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
And Peach,
But we can hear you, Pete. Pete. Oh, God. Pete and his technology. Pete, can you hear me? Right, do you know what the thing is, right? If he stays there, right, I'm just going to give him a quick tinkle. Hang on. There we go. Here we go. Right, wait, don't go, Pete. Don't go. Oh, God, hang on.
Not going anywhere. No,
You can hear me.
I can now. Yeah.
Oh, God. Pete, you're a pain in the...
It's all happening.
Johnny
it's all
Depp.
happening.
Right, so obviously the other, looking at this site, Hermitage, and we were talking about cremations, and we were talking about, this evidence tells us that the Mesolithic period is happening in Ireland a lot earlier, and to have developed this technology, we're talking about people who are much more highly sophisticated than we ever thought. And obviously that axe there that was actually buried at Hermitage, there it is, and it's told us about that we've got to be warned that there's so much out there, and that we've got to really start to think that what we did understand to be the Mesolithic period is a completely different world. And even when we started doing these lectures months and months ago, and then the other site when we went down to Bulner Cliff, hang on, we had that image there. If we go back to the Bulner Cliff, there it is, and where there was a platform at Bulner Cliff on the northwestern side of the coast of the Isle of Wight. And it was just, I just thought, wow, we've got platforms, we've got evidence. And then we started to come across grains, and we started to come across various other objects. And they started to tell us that the Mesolithic period was, again, a lot more sophisticated. This was another star car, but this was submerged sort of 18 meters down off the western coast of the Isle of Wight, and it showed a high degree of craftsmanship and carpentry. And again, even though this evidence comes from the end of the Mesolithic period, again, this site was submerged at the time that the land bridge still existed. And the point is, with the sophistication telling us that agriculture had already arrived in the Mesolithic period, and that sort of idea that we don't have a Neolithic wave of agriculture because it's already arrived. So the Mesolithic period probably ending earlier than we actually thought. We mentioned that the other week as well. I could say much more about the Mesolithic period, but I would say also the one thing that should be in our top 10 when we're looking at the Mesolithic period is the Warren site up southwest of Aberdeen, and we're talking about that wonderful calendar. And again, that tells us that people were very active and very in tune with their landscape 10,500 years ago. So what I'm going to do now, we're going into the Neolithic period, but what I'm going to do is stop. I'm gonna ask Anne a very deep and probing question, and what that deep and probing question is what is the most fascinating piece of the Mesolithic period that we have come across for you?
I thought it was the footprints that really excited me, that lecture we had. I really felt close to these ancient people in a way that I don't like. If you're finding artifacts, it's not quite the same. They were imprints of the real people that were there, and I found that extremely exciting. One of the best lectures we've had, I think.
Because I think, thank you. I think what it was, we were connected. It was happening. It was live.
Yeah, it was like you could walk. You could walk with these ancient people. That sort of connection, which you don't get from a piece of pottery, quite. That's exciting, but you know what I mean. That to me was very special.
because it, yeah, it was, because 31st of May, and then suddenly we were doing it basically the next day. And it was that morning, and it was just like, well, we're talking about this, and it was just it was like it was almost as if the experience that the people were having were like hours ago.
Yes.
Yeah, and then their experience about walking alongside these footprints and then being eroded away into the sea is in real time. You can actually sense, what they're sensing and what they're feeling.
Yeah.
And it was that sort of, by the end of the year or by the end of that week or 2 weeks later, those footprints that had been there for 9,000 years were now gone. Because they'd been washed away with the footprints that had been made that very morning.
Yeah.
Which is so, I remember thinking that what we've got is we're following alongside a set of footprints that are almost as if they're made an hour earlier.
That's right. We've sort of
But
walking
in fact,
almost alongside them. It brought them very close, I felt. The people very close.
And those crane footprints and those auroch footprints, and I was, well, where are these cranes? They've just just flown away. Yeah. They just flown away, and even the stuff that I do with what's called we on a we do on a Thursday at 6 o'clock, we do the work of Tim Ingold, right? And what it is that this guy called Tim Ingold, he came up with this paper years ago, and he's written a lot of stuff on it. It's called Following the Line. And basically what there is trying to see that everything's interlinked, everything's sort of joined in, everything sort of together. The experience of history and time is one moment, is just one feed. And we saw that with Formby, right? But the other thing, much more deeper, is that those footprints made by the cranes, right, they have flown away. So the experience, knowing that they were there a moment ago, 9,000 years ago, but they've just flown away. Yeah. They're flapping their, it's almost as if you get the echo of their flapping their wings, and it's just so there.
That experience drives the imagination immensely. I felt mine particularly. I felt it really. I don't know. You could sort of imagine a being with those people, and I couldn't. I don't think I've had it. Well, I've had touches of it in other things, but that one was very moving for me.
And the this is it's not in Submerged Forest. I believe it's in the that other book that was about Doggerland. Oh my God, I got the title over there. But somewhere in there it says about a postcard, and the past is a postcard from a foreign land. Except we can't get to that foreign land because the postcard that's been sent to us from that foreign land is so far away we can't get there. But it's still happening now, right? But this was not a postcard. This was actually this was almost as if it was the World Wide Web, but 9,000 years ago.
The other thing that I was at the time, perhaps helped me with it, I was reading some anthropology, and there are people today who are, in some cases, not much further on than they were in terms of technology and those
yes.
sort of things. And that also makes it easier to understand.
Anyway, so.
Yeah, go on, carry on. You're really right in what you're saying. There are people around with the same
things do connect. What you find, you're reading one aspect of it and it joins in with another. And yes, I read some books about what brought us to the culture of today, which is an awful mess everywhere. God, what brought us here? And even that connected with some of what we've been doing in the archaeology, but all of them started back in the hunter-gatherer days. What went wrong and what went right, it's so yeah, it all connects. I find
But the big,
connections in all sorts of things.
but,
And
but, but,
although I haven't studied archaeology as much as some other things, nevertheless, when I'm reading something else, it connects to that and it makes sense of that. It just comes in. It's the broader your knowledge bases are, the more you can connect the world up somehow.
and the next person I'm going to pick on is David, and then we're going to crack on. Sorry, David. But the one thing as well is that have we actually been brought here? Because you could argue that we haven't, because we're already still there. You know,
Yes, but unless we don't consider time linear, which I think most people do, which we needn't, because science is telling us we can be in two places at once and two times at once, aren't they? The scientists are studying that at the moment, which is all a bit weird. But if time is linear, then you have to say that was a time before. And although you can imagine it, it isn't quite, is it? It's similar. Or not similar even, what can you say? It just speaks to it. It just makes sense of it all.
Exactly. It's an echo.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to do, I'm going to be very, very brave, because if I ask Dave a question, he'll probably disappear, but I'm going to ask him, right? David, so what part of the Mesolithic period do you feel has hit your boat?
Oh, I think it's all very nice, very good.
Is there anything that sticks out above it all?
No.
So thank you, David. Thank you. So in a way, what David has done, he's connected all the bits. So what David has done, he's actually given his answer, because it's all, and that itself is this idea that it's all interconnected, it's all related. It's all part of that sort of very powerful moment. So what I want us to do now is I want us to talk. I want to talk about the Neolithic period, and it's going to be a lot to do. And what I am going to do, which I should have in front of me now, I'm going to go and get it, and we're going to see if we can get the books out. Hang on a minute, I should have had it in front of me. Sorry. Right. By the way, that sort of that quote that I was talking about, the postcard, it's from this book, the Europe's Lost World, the rediscovery of Doggerland, and I do believe Gina was going to get a copy of that for all of us at 80 quid each.
I have to remind me.
Yeah, I'll remind her. So ancient Britain. Now, the one thing about the Ancient Britain book by James Dyer was that I think I don't know if I did it on Thursday. We have managed to basically and basically look at the Paleolithic and Mesolithic period, right? Which covers 28 pages of this book, right? And then the Neolithic period actually covers, if I get this right, the Neolithic period keeps going, right? And we go all the way up to 83 pages, right? So think about the mathematics here. We've done 0 to 28 pages doing a Paleolithic and a Mesolithic period, and that's taken us the good part of a year and a bit, right? So you can see the problem I've got now, trying to do it in detail for the Neolithic period, right? So the thing is, what I've got to be very, very careful with, right? I've got to be very careful in the way I do it, because I want to look at detail, right? So say for example, we go to page 42 in here, right? And it's got the Grimes graves, or the Grimm's graves axe factory, right? Now I could basically say, oh, the Grimm's graves axe factory. I could say there's loads of holes in the ground, all the different flint and all the bloody rest of it, right? But what I really need to do is actually go into the nitty gritty. what the experience it was like underground, what these items meant to them, how they traded them, what they did with them. And at the same time, what we then got to do, we got to do a comparison there. And we've got to go, for example, to something like the great Langdale axe factory, which is in Cumbria. Or we then got to go to Penmaenmawr axe factory in North Wales. So we've got to try and really get the detail that we've been getting the detail with in regards to the Mesolithic period. So we've really got into the Mesolithic period and we've really done the nitty gritty. We have to do the same with the Neolithic period, right? Because if we don't, we are going to risk missing detail. So that the end result will be that there's going to be so much in the there's going to be so much from the Neolithic period that we don't do. However, David did say, it's David's fault this. David said, well, why don't we do all the detail? Why don't we really go into it and all the rest of it? So if we're doing the Neolithic period until all of us get to 103, right, we can blame it on David.
But it will done the Mesolithic anywhere else. We've only done the UK. We haven't got any comparisons with other parts of the world, have we?
Dates change when you go all over the place as well.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for saving me, Andy.
Chaos.
Thank you. Love it. Right, Margaret. I'll see you next year. Right. The one thing specifically, Margaret, I was very aware of that, and the I did want to do comparisons, but I just thought we've got to focus on British archaeology. Okay. And you are very right, Margaret. You are so right. And but
couldn't we? Just one, for instance, just one different part of the world by comparison at some point. Just the thing.
Well, okay then. Okay, I've got to pander to my audience, right?
Could I ask a question about that? If it was to be in another place, I mean, the world, different parts of the world, developed at different paces, and although the time may have been the same, I don't know whether you would call it Mesolithic if, say, they were miles behind and, were still living grubbing in the ground or something, or, they weren't even developed as full humans or something, which in some parts of the world it might be. Could you really compare that?
Right, the answer is what I mentioned last week, and I keep quoting this 17-year-old lady. She says, Karl says that dates don't matter, right? So, and then, therefore, what is this experience that is the Mesolithic period? Right? What does it exactly mean? Right? And we have done what it actually means for us as within the British context, right? But then it's sort of starved at the edge of understanding what the Mesolithic means to somebody in Papua New Guinea, who still people in Papua New Guinea, in some places of Papua New Guinea, haven't even got to the Mesolithic period yet. They're still in the Paleolithic period.
I was reading about them. Right? That's who I was thinking about at the time. I thought, well, I would have been nowhere near what was happening.
Did they have a hunter-gatherer culture?
Labeling Mesolithic. I just wouldn't have been there.
Go on, Margaret, do your bit, because I got to crack on. Do you see we're still trying to even get to the Neolithic now? We haven't even got there. Right, go on, Margaret, your thing before you blow us all out the water.
I was just wondering if they had a hunter-gatherer thing in the Middle East culture, a similar kind of culture. Was it heavily forested? I've heard of the Fertile Crescent. Was that more in the Neolithic period? When they started farming, what was it like before the first?
I think when we if we want to now, I think everybody needs to cool their eggs a minute, because there is an answer to this, but I'm just trying to get to it. If you go to something like Chepstow, which we've got a very early Neolithic world within where everybody else is in the Mesolithic period over 10,000 years ago. And we've got to know that understanding buildings and understanding the ability to have settlement and civilization is based on your reliance on crops. So therefore, they were planting crops, and therefore their world was able to plant crops, and therefore their trees had been deforested, adding the ability to have the rich soil to plant crops. So vis-a-vis the trees are coming down to be able to plant those crops. If you're unable to plant crops, it means that you don't have the ground to grow anything. Therefore, there's no trees. Therefore, you're not going to live there in the first place. Right. So you've got to look at it that way. You've also got to go back to the original point that it's very difficult to make comparisons in different parts of the world in regards to the Mesolithic period. But it's not, you can do it, but you can't go with the same time frame, right? This is I'm going to give you a metaphor, right? And this is quite deep tonight, to be honest with you. There's a metaphor that I'm going to give you. There's a lady that wanted me to teach her A-level history, Second World War. We got so deep. There were things that we were turning over that we really shouldn't have been turning over. Anyway, one day I said to her, I said to her, there was peace in the Second World War in some countries. There were some countries in the world the Second World War didn't even touch. It wasn't there, right? There were some parts of the world that the Second World War reached them before the 1st of September, i.e. China, i.e. The war between the Winter War between Finland and Russia. You know, there's these things. People having different experiences at the same time. You know, I remember, I thought the other day, for example, there would have been soldiers coming back from the front in Germany. They were coming back from the front. They weren't prisoners of war. They were coming back to their house with their wife and their children, everybody intact. Everyone was alive, right? But down the road, there was a town where most people have been killed. Most of the soldiers that died on the front line, completely different experience, right? And when we think of that as a metaphor, that is also the metaphor for the Mesolithic period. And what we have seen in the Mesolithic period in response to that we've got so much going in the Mesolithic period that the experience from one area to the next is completely different. So, Margaret.
Yeah. I mean, I've got books about the first civilizations in the Middle East, but I don't know anything prior to that. Is there anything? Do we know anything?
These people, right? Okay, let's just, without using the word hunter-gatherer, but you can keep it in your mind, right? Go with the experience that we had with Hermitage in Ireland. We had cremations in Ireland 10,500 years ago. Where did they get that technology from? How did they get that technology? And you start to think that you know, it's fairly unique, and they weren't cremating people in other parts of the world. What was start again. They weren't cremating people in other parts of Great Britain. They were developing and moving on. They must have been there for a long period within the ice in microclimates and all the stuff that we were talking about last week, Tresco, the Scilly Islands, and all that, which made things really, really relevant, right? So what you've got to do is you've got to think, right, the Middle East, they're sort of eating grapes, cultivated grapes thousands of years before anybody else, and then anybody else is having grapes at a different time, and they're finding out that you can that there's yeast and you can ferment bread and you can sort of make alcohol and all the rest of it, right? Things by accident. There's somebody thought, oh, what we'll do, we'll build a building, we'll do this, we'll do that. There's no sense to the way the human condition evolves, right? And you know, it's at so many different levels, very, very complex. And I think this is what makes history and archaeology very, very interesting. And you know, I'll tell you something now. I'm going to be really, really cagey on what I'm about to say. I've got an interview next week with a certain university, and it's to do with how the experience is seen by people in the past with certain forms of disability and all the rest of it. And when I come up with that idea, and when I was going to do it before the pandemic and all of the rest of it, right, things have massively changed. Mindsets have changed. How we look and interpret archaeology has changed. But the one thing about history and archaeology, this is what makes it exciting, because there's nothing set in stone anymore. And that's what makes history and archaeology very, very interesting. I'll give you a case in point. I know this might sound as if we're all over the place today, but this is what transitional archaeology from the Neolithic to the Mesolithic means, right? When you write down history, right, you're almost attached to history. For example, in the Bible, you've got to believe everything in the Bible, right? You got to believe everything in the Bhagavad Gita, right? You got to believe that everything, the immortal word of Muhammad, is actually correct and accurate because it's been written down. May I have a jihad come into my door now to burn me down with what I'm just about to say? But the fact of the matter is, because it's written down doesn't mean to say it's real, right? The archaeology itself gives us answers, but it also offers us questions to challenge the accepted history, which is something that we always need to be very aware of. You know, a metaphor again, 1536. The reason why there was an act of union between Wales and England in 1536, that there was a bloody rebellion in 1535, 1536, which meant that the English could never allow the Welsh to rebel ever again. And do you see that in many history books? In fact, no, it's nowhere. It's in a little footnote somewhere, and we've got to find the evidence. And this is why that takes us back to the story that we had earlier on. Is it just to do with Owen Glendower, or is there something else going on? And it's that thing that we've always got to be we've got to guard against setting things in concrete in regards to our history. Blimey hell, this is getting so deep.
Finding that missing link, isn't it?
But
The
but
missing link. Where you gone?
Who is the missing link? I haven't gone anyway.
Now, I was reading the other day that the ladies
I didn't think you
of the
could read, Pete.
Neanderthals, the ladies of the group would quite often wander off and become mixed with other groups. The hunter-gatherers were much stronger and healthier than the farmers, because they always had a good supply of food of various types, because they were hunting and gathering it. But the farmers who were stuck in the one place and just lived on their crops, they lived and died on the value of their crops. And yet these Neanderthal ladies who wandered off, they found the DNA evidence of this, that the Neanderthal ladies wandered off, mixed with other groups, and so spread that DNA throughout.
And Pete, what you've just said is proven by what happened to the Greenland Vikings, what happened to various other cultures. But in response to back you up what you just said, what we see in Japan is that they've got set settlements, but they continue to hunter-gatherer. They continue to be hunter-gatherers, right? They weren't in the Yamon culture in Japan, which we go back, I think, was 30,000 years ago. They've got settlements, right? Very advanced settlements, but they're going out hunter-gatherer, right? Which puts them not in the Mesolithic world, it puts them in a Paleolithic world, but they got settlements with roads and all these other things. And also, when we look at the Amazonian civilizations, right, we talk about them being set farmers for a few years, and then they bugger off down the road and they set up all over again. What we're talking about, there's no set model to the past. And you are very right, Peter, right? When people went on the Mayflower to Pennsylvania, right, they really struggled, right? the people around them, the Native Americans, they were having a wonderful life, and they just thought, what, these people planting crops, they're really struggling. Why aren't they doing what we're doing? Right. So you're very, very right, Pete. But it doesn't mean to say that you're completely right, because there are people with different models in different parts of the world. And actually, Pete, it's just luck, isn't it? Wherever you are in the world.
Yep.
It is luck. And that's what we can say.
Absolutely.
Well, I understand the development was made, or a big difference in making it was the environment which they found themselves, that some places like the Indus Valley really lent itself to crops and other places didn't. So farming grew up in different places in the world just because it provided a good place to crop things, which doesn't happen everywhere.
It just happens to be where you are. It really, really does.
Yeah, but I say, if you're in a rotten place, like up a mountain and very rocky, you wouldn't do it, would you? Doing fishing or something instead.
They did at Machu Picchu.
Yeah.
So,
and
but
Machu
some of the
Picchu
people
is on one of the ley lines, and the fracture, the geological fractures caused them to actually build it, because they had the broken rock and the pieces of rock had to build Machu Picchu.
Yeah.
And like I say, it was on a ley line, and the fracture of the geology gave them the materials to carry through the building.
We'll have to go back and look at Machu Picchu. I think there's a lot of new things have come up just recently.
Yeah.
Back to the Neolithic.
I don't think we're going to do it tonight. But because I want a little break. I want some of the potatoes that I grew earlier on with a bit of bloody margarine on it. But can I just say one thing?
I'll put butter on it.
I haven't got butter, Pete. Shut up.
You shouldn't eat margarine. It's not good for you.
All right, guys, can you just stop talking about my potatoes? Can you let me talk, right? Right, okay then. Right, the one thing that I will say, which is linked to this, is that we've decided we've got a little sort of event next March, right? So if anyone's interested, it's going to be here in West Wales, right? And we're going to be putting on loads of different activities, from gorse milling to pottery processing, to actually excavating part of a wall of what we've got here, right? So we've got lots of activities. The reason why I'm chucking that in at this point is, anyone interested, they can have a chat with me in the break. That's going to be in March. I think we've got the middle part of March, something like the 15th, 16th or whatever, right? Because there are different ways of doing things in archaeology, different ways of different approaches, and this is exactly what we're doing now. So what I want us to do now, before we actually go on to the break, before anyone actually complains, right, which Margaret wants to complain because she's that type of person, right? The Neolithic period. What are the dates for the Neolithic period? Now, the dates for the Neolithic period, for me, at approximately 8,000 years ago to around 4,500 years ago. Now, the problem with that is it's based on the new stuff that is coming out, Boulder Cliff. Now, if we looked at Boulder Cliff in a lot more detail, the Mesolithic definitely did end 8,500 years ago, or some people actually believe earlier than that. That means we've got a long Neolithic period where lots of massive things are going into the Neolithic period. So if we want to go back to our wonderful book by James Dyer, and hopefully everybody's got a copy of the book. And maybe I should have said last week, you need your James Dyer in front of you next week, right? Because we can use this, and we can. There we go. How many of you have actually got a copy of Ancient Britain anyway? Have you got one, Anne?
No.
Oh, that's a shame. Andy?
Yeah.
I'll see if I can get it.
David? No. Margaret?
No.
Oh, Pete?
No.
Andy, I think they all need to go back to your house.
I've got 300 books in my garage. Do I really need another one?
Oh,
Shut
yeah,
up.
you can never have enough, Margaret. You know that.
So the one thing that we will say, if we just give a bit of a variety, we've obviously got buildings. And these types of buildings, well, we're obviously getting buildings in the Mesolithic period, but we're buildings and lots more buildings and lots more evidence for buildings is really Neolithic, and we're getting lots more stuff, not just in the upland areas that we've been finding in the Mesolithic period, but lots in the lowland areas as well. And lots more people and these things here. Okay, causewayed enclosures. Andy knows I love my causewayed enclosures. We're going to take one of these causewayed enclosures apart. As David Mercer once said, places of the wretched and places of the wretched smells of death. Love it. And again, lots of human remains. Love it. And what else have we got? Ditches and so on, various things are from causewayed enclosures. And what else have we got? Axe factories. We've mentioned a couple of them, haven't we? Penman Myers. We mentioned Great Langdale up by you. This as well, Neolithic period. There we go. Grimes graves. Love it. Gonna really pick that baby apart. And also, look at this. Somerset level sweet tracks. So trackways laid against the mud.
Yeah.
Right. Trackways. New flint implements, much more advanced, much more technical than any flint implements that we've come across before. And an obsession with burial, right? Barrows, lots of different types of barrows. And one thing I would say is that you have heard my spiel on this. Just be right. Two points, just two quick points, right? If you got upright standing in the middle of a field and somebody said there was definitely a capstone on the top of it, not always. They may have been sky burials with uprights. I put a video on recently, a place called Crickhowell on my YouTube channel, right? And basically, just because there's uprights, right, it doesn't mean to say there's a capstone on top. And also, just because people say they're burial chambers doesn't mean to say that they're always used as burial chambers. That's another point. Right. So we've got barrows, we've got chambers, we've got various different types. We've got areas where we've got kists in the ground, where we've got loads and loads of human remains in them, right? And what you could say is that animal remains come into this as well, but that's another thing. And we go from places like Orkney and all the rest of it. We've got lots of pottery. Pottery breathes in this period. Loads of different types of pottery. Was there pottery in the Mesolithic period? Somebody asked me that question. Thank you for asking me that question. And right. Yes, no, yes, and yes, no again. Right? Because the reason why one of the great things was that we're on the edge. Yeah. Well, when we were I'm gonna go and get one now. Hang on a minute. Just stay there a minute. Hang on. Where is it? Fiddling around. La 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 la.
Burials in the Neolithic or the Bronze Age.
Here we go. Look, right. Here we go. In a laboratory, right? In the laboratory at Orkney University, there was one of these things, right? There was one of these things, and there was a load of clay in it, right? And a couple of us looked into it, right? And in this really big, thick clay, which was about that thick, there were like these lines incised into it, right? Really thick this thing was, right? And we looked, and before we could even discuss it, right, the university lecturer smiled at us. A guy by the name of Martin Carruthers, right? Martin Carruthers came up to us, and he basically said, that's pottery, that is. But it was just a big chunk of clay. Yeah, that's very, very early pottery, right? And this pottery itself, amazingly enough, right, was Anne, what's your height?
5'6", 5'6".
Right, okay. If you can imagine a pot, right, that you wouldn't be able to your groin, you wouldn't be able to sort of walk into it, right? It would come up to your
Yeah.
it would come up to your waist here, right? Yeah, or actually higher, right? Maybe these things were maybe 3.5, 4 foot in height, right?
Yeah.
With thick walls like this. So what they did, right? They got this clay, right, and put it in the corner of the building, right? And they sort of built it up, this big clay circular thing, right? They built this up, right? And they realized because it's made of clay and because it's in a dry place, right, it'll dry,
Yeah.
right? And you could sort of tap up against it, you could, and it would be, oh yeah, that's okay, right? But as you know, with clay, when it starts to get damp, the whole thing collapses, right? So what this thing was in this tray, right, was an early piece of pottery, right? But it hadn't been fired. Right, so when this thing collapsed, it just collapsed into the soil and the mud. And the reason why we don't get lots of this early pottery discovered is because it just goes back into the mud. It just goes back into the same form. So the big question is, what is pottery, right? Is pottery fired? Is it a thing to, obviously, it wasn't a thing to store people called Anne, right? But what it was a clay container at the side of the building. Instead of having wicker baskets, right? I tell you what, right? Build it, make it a wicker basket. It's just faff, right? If you got clay, you can make this thing and just like, right, it's ready to put your stuff in there, right? But Dad, if it gets damp, oh, forget about it, right? And it got damp and it fell apart and it fell into the soil. This is what we're coming across. Now, the big question is, right, when does this stuff date from? And we're finding it in Orkney. When does it date from? What are the dates? Right? Because it's like really organic, very clayey, and not it's really just detectable, right? Does that date to 8,000 years ago? Does it date to 7,000 years ago? Maybe, right? Or maybe it's before. The biggest problem is with the Mesolithic period, as we've seen, is to detect the evidence. And right, this is one thing that we didn't do in the Mesolithic period, right? Pros and cons of Mesolithic archaeological sites. Sorry, we got back to the Mesolithic period. You know what? You knew I wasn't going to be able to leave it, right? The pros and cons of Mesolithic sites, right? Upland sites. Because they're upland sites, the archaeology is only going to be very close to the surface, right? So if you're coming across this early evidence of daub on the outside of buildings, or you're going to come across clay, whatever, or other organic stuff, right? There's going to be animals burrowing into it, right? And the only stuff you're going to come across is like the odd burnt hazelnut, the odd burnt piece of timber, and maybe a piece of flint or an axe or something, right? Because the archaeology is so very close to the surface, it gets destroyed easy, right? Then you go to Neolithic sites and you go to places like the Ring of Brodgar. Now, the archaeology at the Ring of Brodgar is meters deep, right? So you're going to get Neolithic layers upon Neolithic layers upon Neolithic layers. And maybe under that, you're going to get the Mesolithic stuff. They haven't even got to the Mesolithic stuff yet, right? What are they going to find at the Ring of Brodgar with the Mesolithic stuff? Or is it going to be destroyed, right? Is there evidence to say that they had pottery in the Mesolithic period? This is the problem. Right, because we don't have many Mesolithic sites, when we compare to the Neolithic period, what I'm trying to say is this, right? Loads of evidence of agriculture in the Neolithic period. That's because the agriculture occurred in the Neolithic period. But when we start to come across grains that have clearly been introduced at Boulder Cliff, right, before the land bridge with Europe had been lost, small, tiny bits of evidence, right? And that means that agriculture arrived during a lot earlier, right? What we do in archaeology is quantifying things. It's called the seriation method. If there's a lot of it, that's when it occurred, right? But we're talking about transition. There was stuff going on in the Mesolithic period, right? but not as much as the Neolithic period. So, and obviously we haven't got as many Mesolithic sites as Neolithic sites. In fact, there's so many Neolithic sites that if I sat here all night listing them all and what's there, right, we wouldn't go home, right? This is what we're talking about. God, on that note, I'm taking a break. It's your fault, all of you. All of you could. Peter, you've ruined my life, right? You by turning up late, right? By not even giving me a strict apology, and it's Anne's fault for talking too much. Right, any questions, folks?
No. One thing that's trying to understand this is part of it is where it is and what the landscape was that they lived in had, but also technology is very much a part of, like this clay you were talking about that wasn't fired. At some point, somebody thought of firing it, and it made something that lasted. And all of that must be very difficult to say when this started and that didn't, and who which part, and how it got around, either by somebody discovering it in that place or learning it from somebody else who traded with them, or they met, or it's all of that is very interesting. It all must have happened in so many different ways.
Can I feed between the lines you just said there, right? And the lines are right. Is why do we? No, I know this is not what you were saying, right? But why do we need to call it technology when it's fired, right? It was equally
in its largest sense.
But what I'm trying to say was it was equally technology than when they were making it anyway, right? Just because they fired it doesn't mean to say that.
I mean, the technology moves on.
It's a change. It's a changing technology moving on. It's like coming from And what I'm trying to say is that in the 1980s, we used landlines to phone people, and that was amazing. Right now, we're using a mobile phone. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Landlines are massive technology, but we think, oh, right, no, it's in the dark ages now. But it's still very important to remember. That's how Andy used to get his jobs.
And at each stage in time, whatever the technology was of that time to those people must have been important to them. Whatever it was, if they were only at a very stage, we'd think very similar. It was their life, wasn't it? That's what was important to them then. Whatever came later, came later.
So what we think later.
Pot may have fallen into the fire.
Sorry.
And then having seen the effect of the fire on the pot, they thought, oh, well, that
that's
has
what
made
somebody
this
would have
much
discovered.
more interesting, much more useful.
Yeah.
And so that they may have moved on from there and decided to try it themselves.
Yeah.
But found that the firing made pottery so much better, so much more efficient for them to use.
That's right. So what I'm saying, but each piece of technology, and I'm using it in its broadest sense, had to be discovered somewhere, and some of the technology sort of got in different places in the world. Like the pyramids that were in South America and in Egypt, they were discovered in. So, and when we're trying to put dates on it, the dates must be all muddled about because they didn't all happen at the same time, did they? They got the dates become, I don't know, almost. I know it's very important, but they almost seem less important to me than that it happened. Somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. Oh God. Right. Anybody else want to say something? Because we'll have a quick break. And I remember saying to somebody today. I don't think we hopefully we'll be finished at 9:30. Oh God. But no rush. Right. Okay. If nobody else got anything else to say, I'm going to have my potatoes.
Good
I'm
on
going
you.
to have a cocoa.
Which I grew. Thank you.
Well done, that man.
Enjoy your potato.
Okay. Well, what we're going to do, we'll come back at it's 8:56. We'll come back sort of just about 5 minutes past 9 or something. Yeah, good. That won't take me long to eat these potatoes. And a partridge in a pear tree. On the 5th day of Christmas. Like the sense of me. For college birds. Free French and oh, God. Oh,
Have you got a cockerel with your chicks?
who, me?
Yes, you.
Yeah, why?
Well, they'd be fertile, won't they, the eggs? So if I put
Yeah,
them
what you
warm,
want?
they could hatch.
Yeah, but I haven't got anyone sitting on. I haven't got anyone sitting on eggs at this minute, you silly man.
Well, I've got some of your eggs. I just thought if you had a cock, then the eggs I've got could be fertile, and I could hatch them.
I haven't seen you for bloody months. How long have
I
you had those
know
eggs?
they're still okay. Eggs are okay. Eggs don't go
What,
off.
what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Sit on them? Oh God, I despair. In Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree, where Alf, the sacred river ran, through caverns measureless to man, down to a sunless sea. In twice-fired miles, where walls were girdled round. Oh, Peter Pan!
Oh, it's 9 o'clock.
Not Peter Pan! Peter Pan! Oh, look at that. Look at one of my potatoes. Look at that.
Very nice. Yeah, it looks a lovely potato.
You didn't put much marge on that.
I didn't put any marge on it, you stupid man.
You should put butter on it. It's really good for you, butter. It's really
Yes,
nice.
it is.
I haven't got.
Of course it is.
Can I just say this right? I haven't got any bloody butter, right? If I had butter, I'd put butter on it. Tell you what, I thought I had special needs.
Yes, you need butter.
Absolutely. Butter, yeah. I remember when you're similar age to me, you must probably remember the same thing. In the rationing, you know, when we were rationed as kids,
Yeah.
and we were allowed 2 ounces of butter a week. You could have a lot more margarine, but the butter was, you know, I remember that because I really liked the butter even then.
A lady farmer who lived just down the lane from us, she kept some of her milk back, creamed it, and made her own butter. And that butter was absolutely wonderful.
I could believe
that was so much better than the standard butter you got.
Absolutely. Well, there's a where is it? I'm trying to think where it is. There's a
We'd
farm,
have a
farm
quarter
museum.
cream as well.
The farm museum in Shropshire somewhere, and they allow you to buy half a pound of their butter, and they do it. They do it the old tradition.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that was something.
Oh, that would be, yes. Oh, yes. And I'd say she used to make her own cream. Well, we'd buy a quarter of cream off her in a tumbler glass, and she'd weigh it off using cattle feed. The pellets from the cattle feed.
Well, if I could get it, I would. I mean, I buy at the moment. I had to search for. But did I tell you about it? I had to search. When we were young. If you wanted to go and buy some meat, it was all grass-fed, kept in fields, in the winter fed on silage. Now, I've struggled to find it. I've managed to find it at last. It took me 2 years to find fully grass-fed beef, which is what I now buy. Can't afford the expensive cuts, but in buying the cheaper cuts of that quality meat, I'm looking after my health better than eating the junk that goes into farming these days.
The butcher I go to, they get their lamb. Their lamb is seagrass fed lamb.
The lamb is easy.
From the Gower.
You see that, but beef is much harder to get hold of.
Well, it is.
And also,
yes.
pasture-raised chickens are hard to come by as well.
Yeah, yes, I imagine they would be, yeah.
And so, I mean, and that was traditional. I mean, that, within a lifetime, that's gone from, it was regular to being, you're really struggling to search for it.
Well, during the war, when a farmer, his sow had piglets, if she had a dozen piglets, he would sell 2 to people like us, and we would take them off him, and we would feed them on all the scraps.
Yep.
And then the local butcher would come and butcher them for us.
Yeah.
And he would take a joint of his choice for doing it, and we would have the rest of it. Yes.
Yeah. Great stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. My husband, they did something like that at school. When he was at school, they kept a couple of pigs. You know,
Right? Yeah.
They called it the pig club. Similar sort of thing.
When I was doing my guide tour on Flatham Island, we had 3 little pigs over there, and they were Tamworths.
Yeah.
So when I would be taking people around, so we had 3 little pigs in here, and they dug it all up. I said, "Well, do you know the connection between pigs and the police?" And they'd all go, "Oh yeah, smell of pork and all that." I said, "Well, no." I said, "These Tamworths, they were brought to the UK by Sir Robert Peel of Tamworth, and he was our first chief of police. And he was a pig farmer."
Anyway, I really struggle to get good food. What I do know about is nutrition, and I know margarine is no good to anyone, and it's just not.
Well,
nor the oils that margarine come from. But so that's something I have learned a lot about, in the sense I might not know much archaeology, but I can advise him on decent food. And as I say, I've struggled, as I've been learning and finding out about it, it's been struggling to find the products, like grass-fed beef. I just didn't know it. And it was advertised I went to loads of butchers round about. Yes, then you find out it's either not, or it only means they grass feed them in the summer.
Yeah.
They're fed on rubbish in the winter. And to find it took me 2 years to find it.
And cattle were fed cattle cake when I was a boy. Though they ate their grass in the fields, but they also were fed a booster of the cattle cake, which was a mixture of various seeds, etc. And linseed oil was part of it.
Anyway, what they give them now, they put them on these. Not in Britain, you do still see some partly done on grass.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you buy this stuff from abroad, they're on these patches where they're just paddling in their own mess. They don't have a blade of grass, and they're fed with rubbish and injected with hormones, and you don't know what you're eating.
No, true.
We've done this wonderful trade, haven't we, with Australia, that Liz Truss managed to set up. I'm going to make sure I don't eat any of that. Yes, but it's surprised what's happened in a lifetime. That's as I say, when we're looking at even when things happened in the past, and things developing at different stages. I mean, if you just think of how we conquered, say we went into Africa with our guns and they had got bows and arrows. We developed that before they did. It made how history went. And I suppose that's been happening for millennia.
Yeah.
That kind of difference, that one side has got something that the other hasn't.
Well, it's like all the immigrants that went into America.
Pardon?
All the immigrants that went into America. And what have they done to the natives?
Wipe them out.
They have tried, yeah.
In studying this food stuff, one of the things I found out, the Inuit the Inuits,
Yeah.
who don't have hardly any greens or vegetables that
No.
they eat. And yet they were very healthy, and the white people went there, and the white people were all getting ill with scurvy and stuff, and but it was this, what can I say, it's an arrogance. They don't know anything. We are
we know it all.
Ask them anything, and what they had a gland, a particular gland that's in seals or something, which is full of vitamin C, and the Inuits knew, that kept them without. So and then yet a lot of the white people died because they didn't know that, and they couldn't get any greens.
I was in Fort Churchill, Manitoba. There we were actually loading grain. The grain had been brought up from Manitoba to Fort Churchill. The port was only open for 3 months of the year, and alongside the silos, the grain silos, were the Inuits buildings. And the Inuits buildings, they looked terribly fragile and things, but these people lasted through the winter in those extremely low temperatures in those buildings, and they were fit. They were a damn sight fitter than the British people. And then our local bar was the Hudson Fur Trading Company. And that was written above the door. And inside above the bar, there was a notice saying, "Don't sell liquor to the Indians."
I suppose that was sort of, well, kept from the old days.
That was just kept there.
Generally don't want it. Don't get Indians in.
But it was still there, visible.
Still there from then. Bit of history there.
That was in the 50s.
Right, let's crack on.
Oh, right, look out.
Let's crack on. Right. Okay. Look out. Right, okay, let's get on with a couple of images now. Okay. Are you getting this?
Oh, is that Maze Howe?
No, it's not Maze Howe.
Gone again.
It looked like it. No, that's that.
No, that's Silbury Hill.
Oh, fair enough.
Now, obviously we'll as I've been saying as I've been saying about the Neolithic period, we could do a whole lecture about Silbury Hill, but then again we could have 5 lectures about Silbury Hill. So it might just be me saying, look, we've got this structure that that has been investigated. We look at little facets of it. We look at the pollen. We look at the way this structure is built, and this might look small, right? But if you compare the trees around it, right, it is quite a massive monument. And this is the thing. This is the difference between the Mesolithic and the Neolithic period. Size. They did things in the Neolithic period in a big way, right? So you don't get huge mounds being constructed in the Mesolithic period. If we did have huge mounds in the Mesolithic period, we'd have found them by now. They also built other more noticeable monuments in the Neolithic period, such as this, which we will all be very familiar with, Stonehenge. Now, this has something to do with the Mesolithic period. In fact, it's within the Mesolithic landscape. But what this has got in common with the Mesolithic period as the synonymous, well-known monument of Stonehenge is that this was developed over an incredibly long period of time. In fact, its uses were incredibly varied and changing. And its interpretation of what this is has been varied and changing. the big problem is giving a lecture about Stonehenge is that there are so many theories. Some are based on what you can see, others are based on just ideas. And maybe when we look at a big, great monument like this Neolithic monument at Stonehenge, is that we should just focus on the archaeology and what we can understand rather than what we can't. Now, one of the things that we have done in the Mesolithic period is we have focused on things that we're seeing, because there's no written information about the Mesolithic period from the contemporary peoples. And similarly with the Neolithic period, but not to discount, we might actually find some writing somewhere at some point in time. And then what we then do is look at this. Various different chambers, various different bits of rock standing up proud against this landscape. And this is one of the things, again, that makes the Neolithic stand apart from its Mesolithic period. They like to build in stone in the Neolithic period, big time, end of story. So obviously, this isn't to demean the Mesolithic period in any way, which you know I wouldn't want to do. But in the Neolithic period, they looked at things differently, as we look at things differently, as with that conversation I had with Anne just a few moments ago. They like to use stone. They like to see stone as important to their everyday lives. And then you get monuments like this, Newgrange, over in good old Ireland. We've got another problem. If we go back, the problem is for all of us to see. And what is that problem? Well, even in the 1950s, they were moving stones into place that they believed should be in certain places at Stonehenge. Differences with the Mesolithic period and the Neolithic period is what we're seeing in the Neolithic period. Start again. What we're seeing in the Mesolithic period in the ground has usually never been interfered with, hasn't been touched, hasn't been mucked around with, hasn't had archaeologists thinking, what we'll do, we'll put that over there. It looks good over there. That's the way it should look like. But unfortunately, when we look at something like Stonehenge, it has been mucked around with because it's made of stone. It's above the surface. It's been deliberately altered, deliberately destroyed, deliberately added to, reconstructed. So wanting to see what we're seeing and to interpret it is very, very difficult. And in many ways, folks, give me more Mesolithic, please. But we've got to move on. Again, looking at this example from Newgrange, again, building on a big mega scale. It was very exciting to find the Warren site, southwest of Aberdeen. But what we were seeing with the Warren site was a load of pits in the ground, and some of them held posts. It's all underground. It's all under the surface, except when you go into caves. And even then, you've got to dig out the archaeology. We did do cave art in the Mesolithic period. We understood some evidence at Creswell Crags and Cathall Cave on the Gower, and also we went to Cheddar. But that is really the most that we'd find above level. It's what is above level in the Neolithic period that makes it the Neolithic period. Can you see what I've done there overnight? I've changed the perspective of understanding the Neolithic period as something about farming, as something about community which already existed, The Neolithic period is not about trade because we've got that before. What it is about the way things were done, the way things were projected, the way we annotate the Neolithic period in our minds as being big and huge and sometimes overpowering. Do you know, I find, for example, when we think about this overpowering world of the Neolithic period with the great monuments, it takes us away from these people, which we did not lose in the Mesolithic period, which we did not lose in the Paleolithic period. Am I a fan of the Neolithic? Well, I'm not going to answer that. But I will become a fan by the time we've finished, because we are going to do it in a different way. We're going to give these people lives within that landscape. We're going to allow their lives within that landscape, the creators of those monuments, to come alive. Each child, each dog, each woman, each tree, each cow, within the evidence that we're finding, will tell a story. May we interpret it in many different ways. Do you know, I visited with a group the chamber at Barcloddiad Gares, which is on Anglesey, right? And basically, it's a place of the giant's grave, and it's near the coast now, and it's basically Neolithic, right? But it was used in the Bronze Age, and you went in there, and it was just overpowering. And the problem was with this site is that Cadw Welsh Historic Monuments had paid for a concrete dome to be placed over it. So the nature and the understanding of the chamber was lost. So having all these stones sticking out with some carvings on, even a carving of a boat on there, which not sure which period it was from, right? I told everybody in sight, and we will be looking at that site, but obviously we're giving a little bit of an overview. I said, oh, they when they excavated, they found like a bit of a mess on the ground that included evidence of little mammals, and there was evidence of frog bones, and the archaeologists immediately interpreted it as like a witchy brew, and you know, somebody had sort of, you know, cast some kind of spell there, and it's like in the literature. And I just thought, oh, come on, let's just try and understand what we're seeing. We're seeing these mammals lived within this landscape, these amphibians lived within the landscape, right? They may have actually naturally died there, right? Why do they need to be cooked in a stew? And I just thought, right, let's just see what we can find. And that's really what I like to do, to see what we can find rather than what we can't find. Again, all these little images. And what we are going to do. Oh, we didn't want that one. We wanted that one. That is near the Nessa Brodgar. That is oh God, the Nessa Brodgar. Oh, Brodgar, the Ring of Brodgar.
Ring of Brodgar, yeah, on Orkney.
I said it was a Nessa Brodgar, but I thought, what's the name of this place? It's the Ring of Brodgar. Sorry, bad moment. Oh wow. But one thing that we one thing about the Nessa Brodgar is that you can really connect with it, because I've been there a number of times. So I can breathe it. I can smell it. I can breathe it. And I've been to Stonehenge. I've been to Avebury, and I've been overpowered by Stonehenge and Avebury. And the reason why, because Stonehenge and Avebury have been changed a lot right? And it's been like mutated and there's this touristy and like, but then the Ring of Brodgar is different because lots of what you see at the Ring of Brodgar as it's been for a very, very long time, including when you look at those two stones there. I think it was in the 1940s. That one over there, that one that's coming up in the corner on the right there. That's recorded as a lightning strike.
Yeah.
In living memory, where when lightning struck it and the stone came down, and you're thinking, oh wow. So in other words, what we're saying is that this is a monument that the standing stone once stood, and then the next minute it's been struck with lightning in the modern time, and that's part of the history and archaeology. And almost in a way that it sort of brings it alive. It makes sense of it. And I just absolutely love. I love this site, and it speaks to me far more powerfully than the other sites that I mentioned, because and what we're talking about, the landscape is so alive, and we're finding new things all the time. And yeah, I might love the site because my university is just down the road, but it's not that at all. I was sort of for this site and into this site long before that. And what you can see is the water there, right? And that being a lock. And under that lock, what they found is lots and lots of evidence of there's field patterns there, there's standing stones, there's so much still to be found there. And that then again takes us back into the Mesolithic lectures by saying that, you know, there's lots out there still to find. There's lots out there to understand. And what I'm going to say is this. The level of archaeology at the Ness of Brodgar tells me that people have lived within that landscape for a very, very long time before the Neolithic period to have such a huge community, right? Okay, simple equation. A lot going on approximately 8,000 years ago. Well, there must have been a lot going on before that to have actually given that landscape in the first place. Vis-a-vis, you've got a landscape in the Neolithic period at places like this that owe their origins to far earlier than the time signs that we're actually looking at. Now, it takes us again to what we talk about with Stonehenge, right? Go back again, go back to these images, right? There it is, Stonehenge, right? That didn't happen overnight. As I said, it took thousands of years to get to there. But the people who built Stonehenge were obviously building things like that somewhere else, right? But it's the only example that we've got of Stonehenge. You know, it's the tongue and groove, the mortise and tenon joints, what we're seeing there. All the architectural prowess is made in wood, but they made it in stone, but they must have practiced with this elsewhere. So it's that sort of development of this world that, again, touches the Neolithic mystery. So there's me talking about these images. So what I've got to do now, I've got to tell you some stuff, right? I've actually got to actually start off with something that Margaret asked at the beginning, actually. And it quite quickly, the Neolithic British Isles refers to the period of British, Irish, and Manx history. So it's a crescendo of connection that has one thing in common: islands. Our development as an island world, our development as a sense of uniqueness. That's why our Neolithic is different from other places, but it is our Neolithic, the new lithic age. That's what Neolithic means. Meso, middle lithic age. Paleo, early or beginning. Neo meaning new lithic age, a new way of being in the lithic age. And, you know, it's not just about flints, it's about everything else that's going on. And it's said that you know, the languages being spoken here were definitely the same languages being spoken in Europe. And we're talking about, you know, this statement I'm going to disagree with. And I will answer why I disagree with the following statement. You can disagree with me, but I'm going to read this out. People bringing in their ideas, leading to a radical transformation of society and landscape that has been called the Neolithic Revolution. And these ideas came over from Europe. And the reason why I don't go with that is because of what we've been saying. Very much with places like the Ring of Brodgar, because I believe that you can't have one answer fits all. As that conversation I had with Peter earlier on, as that conversation I always have, because you can't say that we just revolutionized our landscape, because you've got people in Orkney that are creating many individual waves of revolution. The standing stone circles, ditches, banks, pottery, settlement. They didn't come from the bloody continent. But then again, I'm biasing my own view, because then what you do have is that people are sitting down one day thinking, oh, we'll have a bit of agriculture. As Peter said, we don't need a bit of agriculture. We'll keep on doing this and that. But it's not just a moment of transformation. It's a development period of transformation. But again, I can't deny it. It's a period of big building. Why did they start building big buildings? It's not because they didn't have the skills before, and that's a very important point. It's not because they didn't just have new technologies before, because they always had technologies before. Something led them to build bigger. And why do they start building bigger? Because there's more people. That's as simple as that. Okay, right. You know, you can shake your heads and disagree and say, oh, right, you can build things like this without having lots of people. But why do you need to build things like this if you don't have lots of people? Why didn't you just have a little stone frigging circle over in a corner? That's okay for 5 people in it, right? So it's like, you know, New York wouldn't be New York if it wasn't for the large numbers of people. London wouldn't have 10 million people living there if it wasn't for the large numbers of people building huge tower scrapers and huge cathedrals and walls and bridges and sanitation and all these things that come with more and more people. So the Neolithic, the construction within this world is not just individual monuments in the Neolithic period. It's a landscape of monuments. And then we use the word, and I know Margaret wants to chap at the bit and chuck this out. This is a world of megalithic, the big lithic age, within a landscape of human alteration. And, you know, we saw alignments of timbers and things before, you know, we did. We saw Warren and we see things being erected for people to see. But they were building lots of things circular. They liked the circular form. You know, all right. Yeah, you've got Kilmartin beyond the England-Scottish border. And we got Kilmartin, and there's all these spirals carved in the stone, right? They may have done some of that stuff before, but they're really up there wanting to bring a different world. It's a different world, that's what we'll say. The Neolithic, as it develops, is starting to become a different world. I need to read this to you now. It's a bit about where we know what the word Neolithic means, but when did we start thinking about, that sort of terminology? So the Neolithic people in Europe were not literate, and so they left behind no written record that modern historians can study. Now, I think that word they left behind no written record, it doesn't mean to say that they didn't. So we'll leave that there. All that is known about this period comes from archaeological investigations. And in many ways, the archaeology of this Neolithic world begins with the likes of Aubrey, William Stukeley in the late early 1700s. And they were starting to look at sort of the big monuments like Stonehenge, like Avebury. Sorry to keep going on about them. And it's those sort of intensification of investigating these large Neolithic sites that gives the prowess of the Neolithic period as being on par, as being one of the most highly studied periods in British history. And that's a really good point, because, Paleolithic and Mesolithic period understudied. Bronze Age, yeah, little bit understudied. Iron Age, Maiden Castle, big sites like that, yeah. Roman period, overstudied. And then you've got a little bit of a lull, bit of Viking stuff, bit of Anglo-Saxon, obsession with the Norman period. So there's just castles and so on. So one thing that we've got this sort of, there's a lot going on in the Neolithic period, and therefore it makes sense to look at it from an early period. A chap during the 1800s called John Lubbock coined the term Neolithic, because up until that age, up until later on, he come up with the term, hang on a minute, this was in the 1860s, I think. So John Lubbock, up until that, was called the New Stone Age. So, we'll just call it the Neolithic period. Job done easy. Nice, love it. So nailing the Neolithic period and understanding the Neolithic period came in regards to Gordon Childe when he was excavating at Starcar on Orkney, and Stuart Piggott with his work at places like Stonehenge. There's people like Julian Thomas and Richard Bradley looking at other Neolithic sites that brings the Neolithic period into view. So what we're going to do, we're going to oh my God, this is knackering me out, folks. So I'm gonna come up. I'm just gonna scroll through this. Just grab an image. Do we go with that prehistoric village over there, which is a bit later, or do we? Oh, I want to do Starcar. Yes. Oh God, let's just chuck a Starcar on there. Yeah, we can't even talk about the Neolithic period without an image of Starcar, right? And what we're going to do, we're going to quote this. This is from an archaeologist known as Caroline Malone in her book Neolithic Britain, published in 2001. She says as follows, and let's just read what she says without me disagreeing with it. And the Neolithic period is one of remarkable changes in landscapes, societies, and technologies, which changed a wild, forested world to one of orderly agricultural production and settled communities on the brink of socially complex civilization. Stop, interject. That's a lot of stuff in there. And she's very right. Crack on. It was a period that saw the arrival of new ideas and domesticated plants and animals, perhaps new communities. Interjection, I'm glad she's used those words, perhaps new communities. It discounts and counts everything that we've been saying. And the transformation of the native peoples of Britain again, inclusive of the native peoples of Britain. The Neolithic opened an entirely new episode in human history. It took place in Britain over a relatively short space of time, lasting in total only about 2,000 years. In human terms, little more than 80 to 100 generations that we see this massive, conclusive change within our landscape. And the words I'm going to pick out there in her text, again, are these. Hang on, I gotta get myself ready for this. Right. Though that wording there, settled communities on the brink of socially complex civilization, that's been prepared for. That's what's been going on for the thousands of years before we get into the Neolithic period, 8,000 years ago, or whatever date you want to go with. And the other thing I'm going to go with is basically challenging what Peter said earlier on, right? But it's agreeing with what Peter said at the same time. Peter made the point of that, you know, hunter-gatherer people are a lot better off, and, you know, people going after one or two crops, you know, they're dependent upon that crop, and if it fails, they're dead. Agree with him. However, if you orderly agricultural production is based on being able to store, trade, movement, having alternating crops but set in one location, that's all to do with knowledge and understanding of those changes within the landscape, those societies and the technologies. And that, my friend, opens our Neolithic period for the next few months. Are there any questions? I think everybody's gobsmacked. I burnt you out.
No, I was saying it sounds very exciting. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I am as well, because I want to. I personally want to use the same investigation method that we've done with the Mesolithic period. I want to, you know, I'm frightened of Stonehenge and Avebury, right? I'm frightened of Star Karl because I've been to these places. I've been given the overburden of knowledge, right? And somehow I need to rewrite that, and I need to get to what I want to tell you, right? So let's think about something about Stonehenge. I want to talk about the causewayed enclosure, what made Stonehenge the place, why it's there, right? Avebury, wooden post stuck up there first. What's that huge ditch around the outside? Star Karl, the bloody limpets that made Star Karl in the first place. Those are what makes these places interesting, not the big bloody stones at Stonehenge.
The avenue the avenue at Avebury and the fertility stones stood out at Avebury, didn't they?
Oh, yeah, I got a photograph of you standing next door to a fertility stone. Yeah. So, you know,
but that was the point of the reason for being for some of them.
I like the words you use, the point of reason for being, and it's there because it's there. It means something to them. The powerful gravitas of stones, which are in excess of 50 tons, right?
Mm.
That is what these people were saying. It was a statement. I wanted to use some really bad language there, but some of you would really get upset. But it was the projection of everything that what meant to them, right? It was their ownership of the world. It was their stamp on the world, and it's still there today, Pete.
Yeah.
Right. So, anything else you want to say, Anne?
No, I don't think so. Very interesting. I found the whole thing very interesting today. Look forward to what's coming.
Right. What about you, Pete? Pete DeMeat? Anything else?
Well, having been to those places, the Ring of Brodka and Starcar and all those, and Maze Howe, and the standing stones before Maze Howe, where the stones are set, so that when the rising sun on the midsummer day goes through the stones and directly into the opening or the entrance to Maze Howe. That took quite a bit of obviously knowledge in setting it up to start with. The knowledge these people had, we don't give them credit for.
Did you know that it was there was an eclipse today?
Yes, there was a partial eclipse today. Yes, I didn't actually see it myself. It was
No,
cloudy.
people talked about it, right? It was an issue, right? But can you imagine what you've said there? But can you imagine what that meant to them back then?
Oh, yes.
You know, I looked at the night sky last night, and it was like all these stars up there, right? That meant a lot more to those people back then than it does to us today. We take our world for complete granted, and you know, we should remember that we're very lucky to have what we've got around us, and such an absolutely beautiful planet. And what we have done with it, and what is left around us, and many more powerful things. You know, I'm going to make a statement now, right? And I believe I'm very right in this. These people didn't go around killing each other and fighting. They had a respect for their world. They were able to use their world and able to understand it and be part of the world. When we go around, well, I tell you what, we're so civilized today, right, that we still kill each other, right? These people.
I think we also fill our lives with rubbish and knowledge, and don't appreciate
Exactly.
the kind of things they would have done. I mean, we sit watching quiz shows on the telly half the day, you know, and you think, well, you know, if they went out and looked at the stars, they are amazing. I find nature generally a source of wonder, but as I say, and a lot of people do, but there's also some that never see it.
Through my kitchen window.
Certainly not in the way that those people long ago would have.
Through my kitchen window at night.
Pardon?
At certain times of the year, I see the constellation of Orion.
Yeah.
And when I can see the constellation of Orion with his sword and the whole thing together, everything in the world is fine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just
That's a comforting sight.
It's all sorts of things in nature. I walked past the bush today, which had got sort of red berries, and they weren't. Instead of all in clumps, they were all spread throughout it as though an artist had arranged it. You know, and you look at that and you wonder, isn't that amazing? It's just something I saw today. I mean, it's nothing important, but it's
it is important. No, I'm sorry, it is important that their world, we take our world for so much granted now. Their world was so much more special to them than our world is to us today, right? We are being warned from the past every single day. They were able to live amongst each other, to be able to do these things, to be able to survive, right? And we do these terrible things, and I've got to be honest with you, they were better than us.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I read these 3 books from different kind of directions, as I say, to see why the world had got in the mess it is today. And I think they explained some of that that we're saying now. That was the trend of it.
Exactly.
And then looked at different aspects of where we've gone wrong.
Sadly, a lot of it is greed.
Pardon? Greed. Well, it's yes.
Sadly, yeah.
It is.
A lot of it is greed.
I think it sort of started to go wrong once you'd got the agricultural revolution, and instead of just a head man or somebody, you know, it suddenly became very striated, and so you started getting kings and slaves, and it developed from there. And that, I think, it's been like that ever since in somewhere.
People thought they were better than others, exactly.
Yeah.
Right, so anything else from you, Anne or Peter?
No.
Right, now, Andy, anything from you, love?
I was just wondering with the conversation that just came up there, and it suddenly dawned on me, we know what the stars are, but they've got no idea. I wonder what they thought the stars were.
Mm-hmm. A wonder. They'd have been a wonder of nature, probably.
Yeah.
Unless they had, because so many, I mean, religion is ubiquitous as far back as you can go. And it might have been, some belief of God or something, because the things that really were amazingly wonderful that they don't understand, they can become.
I think that's where God came from, wasn't it? So
yeah.
Or the concept of.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Or if you're watching the new Lord of the Rings series, Sauron. But...
Yeah. Or aliens, of course. Then they would have known what the stars were.
But I remember it was in the news about 2 years ago about they found a wall painting in a cave of a constellation.
Yeah.
And it was accurate.
Yeah.
So, I mean, really ancient. They were looking at fairly accurately, that they got it right. So they must have been really studying it as a, like scientific observation, really, at their level.
Well, the constellations moved through the year, didn't they?
Yeah.
And they would appreciate what part of the year it was due to the constellations which are visible.
Yes.
At that particular time. It's like me with this.
They'd have known more than most of us do, wouldn't they?
It's like me with Orion. They're looking up there and seeing Orion. I look on the other windows and I see the Great Bear and things like that. But none of it affects me like seeing Orion.
Like Orion.
Yeah. It's just that it gets me.
I'm a bit the same with the North Star.
Not like this bush with
there you are, yeah. There you are, yeah.
Touch you or not, I don't know.
I'm very comfortable when I can see the North Star.
Well, there you go.
So you should be. You'd like to see Andy, exactly.
Yeah. I know where I am. Yeah, I kind of think, what happens if I went? So what happens if I go down south though?
It's probably been nicked by somebody from Barry.
Well, that's it. You got the what's it? The Southern Cross, isn't it? What they use?
The Southern Cross.
Yeah.
So anything else you want to say, Andy?
No, thank you. It's an awful big area to cover with a lot of things to study. Yeah. Are you sure about this?
No, why don't they just do the Nessa Bodka for the next 5 years? And that's fine. That'll be enough. Andy, no, I'm not sure about this. You're the one who come up with the idea of just doing it.
I didn't gonna in that minute detail, but yeah. But
I've got a photograph of Nessa Brodka with a fully dressed Scotsman with kilt and everything on until he got close to me and he was an American.
Yeah. Well, that's how everyone in Scotland dresses, isn't it? The Americans.
Well, of course.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
I took a photograph of him because I thought this is a beautiful thing with this Scotsman walking towards me with all the regalia.
Yeah.
How are you doing? I'm from the United States of America.
Hey, that's America, yeah.
I'm gonna make it into a golf course, yeah.
and then obviously they wore all that type of stuff at the Battle of Bannockburn.
Yeah.
Talking about Bannockburn, the Bannock tree of Margaret. We can't even hear her. She's muted, thank goodness.
No, I've not a great deal to say, really.
Oh, that's a shock.
I'm reading a book about early Ireland.
Oh, yeah.
Which is very interesting. It's got a lot about Newgrange. They say they haven't found any tools at all from the Mesolithic period, and not tools, pottery. No Mesolithic pottery found in Ireland, but loads found in the Neolithic period. but there are over 300 of these passage tombs, and this book was written in 1989, so I dare say they've found
A couple more since.
a few more since then, and they defined the end of the Mesolithic and the beginning of the Neolithic with the decline of the elm.
Ooh, that's
Bloody
interesting.
hell, that's a new way of doing it.
Yeah.
And
Really
they're not
interesting.
sure if it's disease.
Right, okay.
They don't
Yeah.
think it's caused by the Neolithic farmers clearing the land. It could be cattle. Cattle like to eat the young shoots of the elm tree. And as they did clear the land, a lot of weeds kind of grew in their place. So it could have been the type of weeds that were growing. They don't really know what exactly caused the decline, but it happened all over Scandinavia
Well,
as well.
it happened here recently, didn't it, with Dutch
Yeah,
elm?
well, we had the
did.
Dutch elm
Yeah.
disease, didn't we?
Yeah, that
But
wiped
this
out
was
virtually
very
all of
much
them.
a factor of the beginning of the Neolithic, was the
Mm.
decline of the elm tree.
Ooh,
Hmm.
That's
interesting.
definitely new.
You know those spiral marks that you find them in Ireland,
A lot of them, yeah, all over the place, yeah.
and you find them on Long Meg
Yeah.
in Cumbria and up in Scotland. I wonder if
And Brittany, yeah, all over the place, Kilmartin, yeah.
they have a cosmic connotation.
Oh God, we've already done, yeah, no, when we get to that one, yeah, that's going to be fun again.
Mm.
The lair of the white worm.
Oh God, shut up you. Right, so before we ask David his point, because you know he's going to go, we'll go to David next. So obviously next week, more on the Neolithic next week. We're just gonna go with the flow. So more Neolithic next week. So David, anything you want to say, darling?
Thank you.
Okay, David, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you. Hopefully see you next week. So
Oh,
anyone
yeah.
else want to say anything else?
No.
Look at David, he's got 12 coats on.
I have, yes. It's
Cold
cold.
up,
Getting a
cold
bit
up north.
chilly, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Good night,
All
all.
right, David.
Good night,
Bye.
David.
Thanks
Night,
for joining
David.
us, David.
Did
As
they
ever,
ever
David, it's a
discover
pleasure.
what that Silbury Hill was for?
That's why we're doing a lecture on it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
let's
another
just,
can
I
of
tell you what,
worms.
let's just tell you now. It's about the white worm. Yeah, shut up.
What was it for?
What was it? Oh, why? Why there?
Why?
not-
why-
why not-
Well, yeah, exactly. And then we're getting another one at Marlborough as well, which
Yeah.
is oh God, oh
Well,
don't go there.
That was built
Andy?
for the school.
Shut up, Andy. Andy, Andy, do you know in front of, if this is a secret conversation with you, if I lie to everyone and say that Neolithic period doesn't exist, we get straight into the Bronze Age and it's easy.
Yeah. That's it. Lots of artifacts, dead easy. Yeah. Yeah. Well
Exactly, love it.
documented.
Easy.
Yeah. It
Easy.
does.
It's one big Stone Age, isn't it? It
Yeah.
How did they
holds
decide
the
how
whole
to make
thing.
bronze?
It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Yeah.
What
How
in
did
fact,
that happen? That hill does my head in. Sorry.
What, Silbury?
Yeah, really
Well, it's
does.
just a nothing.
It's hey, it's a
nothing.
massive hill.
Well, it's a massive
Nothing.
hill, but
But
it's
built
not
with
a-
what? Why was it built? What for?
Right.
How?
It's just a big
They
nothingness.
didn't even have spades. Never mind a wheelbarrow or a digger.
Well, I've just been reading about porcelainite
hands.
axes, which are tougher than flint. And I've never heard of those. Have you?
No, I haven't heard of them. What are those?
Porcelainite axes, mostly found in Ireland, but found in Denmark.
Oh, they're making it
found
up.
from all over.
He's making it because he goes
Porcelainite axes.
Can't trust the Irish.
He's a
Found
very
all over
naughty
Britain.
boy.
Found in the Shetlands as well,
Wow, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
and it's tougher than flint.
Right, so that's a kind of Norse connection, isn't it? Then
Why have
What's
we
it
never
called
heard
again?
of that?
what's it called, Margaret?
Porcelainite.
Porcelainite. Oh, I've never heard of that.
Porcelain, yeah.
Porcelainite.
China.
axes.
Oh, it's come from China.
No,
Well,
it's
no, what we would call is China.
No. I know we. Look, I know we got a cosmopolitan Britain, right? But I do not believe the Chinese got here 8,000 years ago. Just please, no.
Via Orkney, yeah.
Via Orkney, no, via St. Austell's, probably.
That's interesting. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, mostly in the north of Ireland, but up right from the Shetlands to the south of the...
Oh, right, for God's sake. Well, you spell her out for me. We're going to have a bloody look before we finish.
Yeah, because why is it not on mainland UK then?
Right, how do you spell it?
P-O-R-C.
P-O-E-R-C.
E-double-L.
E-double-L.
A-N-I-T-E.
A-N-I-T-E.
Mesolithic.
Hang on a minute. What? Hang on a minute. Right, hang on. I think we spelt it wrong. Hang on. Right, okay.
P-O-R-C-E-double-L-A-N-I-T-E.
We spelt it wrong. Hang on.
Yeah.
No, I can't. Porcelainite.
Yeah.
Oh, no E. No E.
Have an E.
What's an E in it?
P-O-R.
O-R.
Well, you said there was an E in it, you silly.
No, you did.
No, you added that.
Shut up, you.
P-O-R.
Right, there.
There.
Ooh.
Oh, what?
Porcelainite.
Yeah.
What's the thing? What?
Ooh.
Oh,
Like a white flint, isn't it? Wow.
Yeah.
Well, they made axes out of them.
Yeah, I've seen that somewhere. I didn't know that's what it was called.
Andy, I think you're right.
Wow, that's really
Some of
interesting.
them are
Hang on,
chipped
there's
and
no
some of
other
them-
stuff here.
Some of them are polished.
That's the only image on you.
Ah. Well, there's loads in here, look.
Yeah,
Look.
the logic going on.
Yes, that's from the Northern Library.
Right, okay.
That's
Oh,
really
God.
interesting, that. Yeah.
You all got your newsletters, did you?
Yes, thank you.
Yep,
Oh, ages ago.
yep.
You only had it last week.
Well, it seems
Right,
like
okay.
ages ago.
Yeah, well, that's you.
Don't
Right,
forget,
anyone else want to say anything else before we finished?
yeah, don't forget you got to use your stamps up.
Yeah.
As usual, we have been on for 2 hours and 29 bloody minutes.
We've got
Right.
to use our King's Head
Yeah.
stamps before.
Well, yeah, it's the ones without the barcode. You've got to
Oh, is
use
that
that.
what it is?
Yeah,
Yeah.
those new ones.
Yeah,
have got a
but
great
not
big
all-
barcode.
Not all of us have got sheep, Andy.
No.
When have we
that's
got
true.
to use them up by?
31st of January, I believe.
Oh,
What's
that's
that's bloody ages away.
Oh, yeah. But winter's coming.
Christmases as well.
Oh, thanks a bloody bunch.
December, please.
Right, okay. So, what we're going to do, anything, if Pete, Andy, and Margaret's got anything else to say it now, and we'll go on to next week.
No, but I'll read the rest of this book and make notes of anything relevant.
Right,
Yeah.
what you're saying, there's a whole book on porcelainite, which none of us have ever heard before.
No,
See,
that's brilliant. That's
I
brilliant.
felt
That is.
sure you would know what it
No,
was.
never heard of it. It's
You've
brilliant.
been an archaeologist and all. I thought you would know that.
It perhaps doesn't come under archaeology.
It don't come under archaeology,
How
no.
will it come under then? Geology.
Ceramics.
Ceramics, yeah, nothing. Ceramics, there's nothing to do with archaeology. Nothing to do with it. Absolutely
No.
nothing to do with it.
No use at all.
No use at all.
That's the name that the Irish give it, and we call it.
Oh yeah, we call it.
Oh, for God's sake! No
We call it-
wonder.
We call it church.
porcelain.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, Andy's right. We probably call it shirt.
Never thought of it having a different name. Yeah. Nah, they wouldn't do that, would
I
they?
didn't realise that cremations were very common in Ireland.
Mm.
Yeah, well, they
Cremated remains at Newgrange even, which I didn't know. So there you
yeah, they were coming in by the Neolithic, but obviously, yeah, a lot in Ireland.
practice, it says.
Exactly. Right. Okay.
Okay.
Very good.
Right. What? 2 hours and 32 minutes is fine. Don't mind me.
And
What
that
are we
was
supposed
just
to be doing?
that was just the introduction.
What are we supposed to be doing? We're not supposed to be doing an hour and a half.
We haven't got to the nitty-gritty yet, have we?
No.
No. And yeah. When we do 5 weeks looking at Stonehenge, yeah, you have got trouble.
Yeah.
And that's one single stone.
Yeah.
And did they build it in Wales?
Is that a sarsen stone with
Oh,
a
yeah.
surface like sugar?
Mm.
Well, no, the problem is with sarsen, it's really good as a vinegar with chips.
Oh, product placement. Well done, Carl.
Yeah, you see that? Well done. It's
Yeah.
good. That's really good. That's really good.
Sponsorship deals there, I can see.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. I can see that. Right. I can see that. Oh, by the way, Andy, Islam beard
Yeah, that's coming along nicely, isn't
sponsorship.
it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't,
get...
that's they
Are you
don't
gonna-
do money.
Are you going to be a Islamic person in the next drama?
A mufti.
That's
Muslim,
another
are you gonna
placement,
be a
Andy.
Muslim?
The Quran. It's the Quran thing. No, actually, what I got to do is level this out. I'm just doing Jesus Bible. You see, Bible sales.
Right.
Yeah.
Used to be the biggest selling book, that, didn't it? And then someone
Until
took
it was
over
taken
from
over
it.
by Mein Kampf.
Oh, surely, what's his Chairman Mao's little red book must have sold more.
Yeah, and Colonel Gaddafi's green book. If you come up with a colour book, you sell loads of it.
Yeah, I remember coming across the Black Book of Carmarthen. I thought, wow, what a great
Oh, yeah.
name! And then why is it called the Black Book of Carmarthen? Because it's black. Oh, right.
Hey, I gotta be honest with you. I was walking along with a couple of people today, right?
Mm.
And this woman said, "Oh, what variety are those apples on your phone?" She said, "Green."
Well, you see, that's advanced society for you.
Oh
Hmm.
God.
Well,
Right, on that note, right, that's
Okay.
killed it now. Andy,
Yeah.
that's deaded it.
yeah. I'll say good night.
Good night,
All
all.
right.
Good night.
So,
Good night.
okay, I'll see you all next week.
Yeah,
Good night,
thanks,
and
Carl. Good night, everybody.
my pleasure, Andy,
Yeah.
Margaret,
Bye.
and Peter, and
Bye.
Andy. I'll see you next week.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Take care. Cheers, guys. So, oh right, we've everyone's gone. So, just doubled the audience. Got to go, sadly. And Ian Briggs. We're gonna have to finish now, so don't forget to like and subscribe. Relook over this, and that'll be good. I think other people are gonna be doing it as well. Anyway, don't forget to sort of do the like and subscribe box. Take care. Night, guys. Bye. I'm gonna look in the chat box. Chat box. Nothing in the chat box. Nothing in the chat box. Right, anyway. Oh, I gotta double check again. Do you know what? Right, those potatoes earlier on, close. Oh, crumbs. What have I done now? I'm trying to end this. Okay, good. Anyway, night. More from the Neolithic next week.